A ruling from New York Judge Arthur Engoron in the Trump civil fraud trial. There are new accusations of potential tax fraud from the Trump Organization. According to the New York Times, quote, the new accusations against Mr. Trump's family business came late last week in a report from an outside monitor whom Justice Engoron assigned in late 2022 to keep an eye on the company. The report highlighted several paperwork issues at a family company trying to shake a legacy of sloppiness. Missing disclosures, typos, math errors, and questions about a $48 million loan between Mr. Trump and one of his companies. On Monday, Trump's lawyers fired back defiantly, calling the report an absolute lie and claiming that the outside monitor is trying to justify her work to continue getting paid. But as the New York Times notes, quote, the findings and the response from Mr. Trump's lawyers could embolden Justice Engoron, who often seems skeptical of the former president's assertions and sympathetic to the Attorney General's case. Joining us here at the table, Democratic strategist and director of the public policy program at Hunter College, Basil Smikle. Harry Litman is back with us. Harry, how could the findings from the Financial Monitor and Trump's lawyers' response then impact Judge Engoron's decision?
The monitor is appointed by him. And this is actually an aspect of the case we haven't been thinking about because Engoron already ruled on it and it's up on appeal. It's probably the most devastating. And you're right. I think we'll get the other, the bigger part of the opinion probably by tomorrow, but it's the one that actually yanks the certificates away from his corporate entities and appoints a monitor. Barbara Jones, extremely well respected, has done many high profile cases, basically beyond reproach, to just get certain information. And her report said, you know, they were by and large cooperative, but it was riddled with errors, and some of them seemed pretty blatant and stinky. So that could well, if nothing else, make Engoron think, you know, these guys are incorrigible. It's really more or less the same pattern. And this is a part of James's case, count one, that he has already decided for her and is up on appeal. So in that sense, it bolsters the entire 6-count case that he's going to write up by, he says, tomorrow.
Well, Harry, help me understand something, because part of what the Financial Monitor concluded is that the Trump Organization needs continued monitoring. She writes, quote, absent steps to address the items, my observations suggest misstatements and errors may continue to occur, which could result in incorrect or inaccurate reporting of financial information to third parties. I wonder then, does that mean that Judge Engoron's ruling likely extends the work of the monitor?
The work of the monitor would be extended in any event unless the appeal were reversed his initial ruling. All she's saying is these guys, it's not just stray mistakes. They've got structural problems. They have very poor internal controls. That's what she says just before the passage you cited. And she's not trying to justify her own work. She's saying what needs to be done in order to get accurate information out of them, that, you know, they just have some structural problems that make it hard. So she's sticking around unless the Court of Appeals, and this would be in a year, the appellate division in New York reverses that whole aspect of Engoron's ruling.
So at first blush, Basil, my thought is, potential fraud during a fraud trial, interesting choice. But it almost is more interesting to me that what the monitor is saying here is there is sloppiness. And as Harry just said, you have structural problems. There's not proper accounting happening within your business. You would think most businesses would go through a trial like this and say, we need to clean up shop. We need to tighten things up. The fact that that has not happened, it feels like a tell.
Yeah, it's certainly a tell to me. But, you know, if you've been in New York or following Donald Trump and his businesses for an extended period of time, there may have been a point where you could point to some legitimacy of it, maybe perhaps very early on. But what seems to be clear is that over time, the business is built on the brand, and really it's just the brand. It's not even accounting. It's clearly not something related to any legal propriety. It is literally just surviving on his brand alone. You know, good accounting practices be damned. And that really is I think that is who Donald Trump is. Like, his whole existence is based on a very public persona that he used very heavily to sort of get the next thing, including being president of the United States. And I don't think anyone really believed, I imagine certainly no one in the real estate community or among his, financial peers in this city believed that he was running a significant business or a legitimate business that could survive without him. But it certainly survived seemingly on the lies that he told and that others within the organization told, just to move the ball forward and to obfuscate, certain information that anyone else looking at it would say, this is wrong, this is erroneous, and this is not even a good business practice.
It's just so wild, given that it is a highly regulated industry, right? That the industry at large has rules and regulations, and everyone's supposed to be following them, and that Donald Trump says, well, those rules do not apply to me. And then there is, of course, the other element of the Trump playbook that we see, which is anyone who rules against him, who points out flaws, he claims bias. That's what he's claiming in the case of this monitor. And I wonder how long you can do that, how many different people you can point the finger at before finally say, who's the common denominator here, sir?
But I also look at the impact this has on the narrative he weaves for his supporters, right? Because on the one hand, does this, and I'm not an attorney, but on the one hand, does this meet the same kind of smell test as, let's say, Bernie Madoff? And why we look at that is because it's a Ponzi scheme, but the impact of it is that you hurt the little guy, right? You hurt, like, the average investor. And one of the things that's going to be interesting is, does the outcome of this trial have the same impact, that Trump actually went and hurt and defrauded the little man, the average contractor, for example? That could create a problem for the narrative he's trying to weave. I don't know if it would be enough, but to me, that's the one way that you get to this. There are a lot of folks that may not understand the accounting parts of this. They may not understand that what he was doing was more systematic. They may just chalk it up as, an error here and there. That's what he'll be able to say. But if we really wanted to stick, you've got to portray him as the person who tried to defraud the American public. We do that, but the question is, does the outcome of the trial do that?